May is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and we're excited to celebrate AAPI contributions to our nation's history and culture. Check out our book lists for all ages, programs, and more at queenslibrary.org. It's Mental Health Awareness Month. Teens, learn how to maintain your mental health and support your friends with activities, book lists, programs, and resources especially for you all month long. Learn more at queenslibrary.org. Step up to the plate and get your QPL Special Edition Mets Library Card. Current QPL cardholders and new card applicants can get this free card at any QPL location. Learn more at queenslibrary.org/Mets and check out our amazing array of free books and services at Queens Public Library.
Welcome to Civics for New Yorkers. I'm Diane Burrows from the League of Women Voters of the City of New York. We are a nonpartisan organization whose purpose is to promote informed and active citizen participation in government. Our mission is to expand our outreach and increase all New Yorkers' participation in local communities and government through civics education, the vote, and issues advocacy. We're going to be taking questions at the end of tonight's presentation, so put them in when you have any questions. So we're here today to share with you ideas as to how you can civically engage and participate in order to influence and affect change, especially locally, right here in New York City. This presentation is an overview of the 3 important and accessible ways people can have influence in our communities. These 3 pillars are voting, lobbying and advocacy, and community involvement. If you're interested in more in-depth information, we have other presentations that take a deeper look at each of these topics separately. The purpose of this presentation is to introduce you to the positive differences you can make through the power of voting, lobbying and advocacy, and civic involvement all year long and in every election cycle. We will also bring you up to date on the newest election laws that will affect this year's voting and that the League worked really hard to pass. So where does this power come from? Under our form of democracy, we have 3 branches of government: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. The power of our government is granted by the people. It is the people who give power to the leaders through the election process. We, the people, are the first 3 words of the Constitution. We have rights and we have responsibilities granted by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights that enable us to engage in the political process, beginning with the most basic of our responsibilities, voting and participation in the election process. Here in New York, as in every other state, election law is written by the state legislature. For many people in America, voting rights have not been easy to come by, and we are still fighting to maintain and advance the right to vote in far too many places in this country, even today. Let's turn our attention now to the first pillar of civic engagement, and that is the participation in the election process here in New York. Starting with the creation of your voting action plan. We don't just stop with voter registration. We want all New Yorkers to have a plan as to how to register to vote, the important dates you need to be aware of, how to find your polling place, and how to make your decisions on who and what you will be voting for. Here are some important resources we will be sharing to help you find all this information. You might want to take a screenshot of this slide for future reference. The first website is the Board of Elections website, vote.nyc. This is really your one-stop shop, and we're going to be using this site to show you all the ways that you can navigate this site during this presentation. The Department of Motor Vehicles and the TurboVote sites are useful for voter registration, and we'll take a look at them in just a moment. The League site, the League platform, Vote 411, will help you understand more about the voting process and who and what are on your ballot, as we'll discuss in a few minutes. Most fundamentally, be sure you are registered to vote and that your registration is current. You must be registered at the correct address and under the correct name and in the political party you choose for the purpose of voting in the primary. More on that in a moment. Presently, there are 3 ways to register to vote in New York: online, by mail, or using a hybrid of the 2. First of all, if you have a New York State driver's license or non-driver ID, you can register or update your voter registration online through the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV. The new law makes this automatic. There will only be an opt-out button. So automatic voter registration will actually expand in New York, and we'll be able to have automatic voter registration in other places where you interact with New York government agencies such as SUNY schools, public housing, and Medicaid, but that hasn't happened quite yet. If you don't have a driver's license, you can partially register online through TurboVote. Go to their website and complete an application online, and then they'll send you the paper form to complete. Or you can use the paper form from the Board of Elections. And you can find this form at your public library or any other public agency, and the form will be available there for you to complete with a pen. And these forms must be mailed in to the Board of Elections. As I mentioned a moment ago, as part of the registration process, you will have the opportunity to select a political party. This will allow you to vote in the primaries. This is very important in New York because we are a closed primary state, meaning that only party members can vote in a primary. In a general election, you don't need to be a party member to vote, and you may vote for anyone you wish, regardless of their party affiliation. The next step in making your voting action plan is to keep track of the important dates and plan when to vote. Here are the dates for the upcoming primary in June. Every election's important dates and deadlines will be available on the Board of Elections website, vote.nyc, as well as on our website, lwvnyc.org. Notice, because of the new law, we now can register voters up to 10 days before the election. So June 17th is the deadline to register to vote or postmark your voter registration form for the June 27th primary. Notice these other important dates. June 12th, the last day to postmark an application for an absentee ballot, which you can also complete online at vote.nyc. June 17th is the first day for early voting, so you'll need to check on vote.nyc to see where your poll site is. June 25th is the last day of early voting. June 26th is the last day to apply in person for an absentee ballot. And June 27th is election day for the primary for the entire city council this time around. And also the last day to deliver your absentee ballot in person to the Board of Elections, or to drop it off at any poll site in the city, or to postmark it. Also notice by this information that we have 3 ways to vote in New York: by absentee, by early voting, and by election day voting. Be sure to keep track of all these deadlines for submitting all of your information and applications. Be sure that you check at vote.nyc, because that's going to tell you where your poll site is. And for early voting, it may very well be different than your poll site for election day. Also, the hours vary during early voting. So vote.nyc will keep you up to date on the hours of your poll site for early voting. The last step in your voting action plan is to make your voting decisions. As we just saw, the Board of Elections site is a really good starting point. When you enter your home address, it's going to show you your sample ballot for the election. So you can learn which candidates and if there are any proposals in November on the general ballot that you'll be voting on. In the primary this time around, we will be using ranked choice voting to select candidates for the new city council in November. Some of us may also have judges and district leaders on the ballot. Remember, we vote who represents us, so everyone's ballot is going to look different. You are represented by where you live. Once you know who and what are on your ballot, check out the resources for nonpartisan information about the candidates and the issues. Nonpartisan means that there is equal treatment given to all the candidates and no opinion is going to be offered to you. You can research through all other trusted sources. Be sure to notice if a site is partisan or nonpartisan. The candidates' websites will give you their position on issues, and those are partisan responses. Vote 411 is the League of Women Voters nonpartisan website, which will give you information about the candidates in their own words, equally presented about all the candidates. Once you have your voting action plan in place, then it's time to turn to your community and help others to get their voting action plans in place. Get involved in a voter registration drive at a local school, faith organization, green market, or anywhere people gather. We at the League of Women Voters offer training to help you organize your own voter registration drive. Call or email us at lwvnyc.org so that you can schedule a training for you and other people in your community. You can also take a training with the Board of Elections to become a poll worker in your community. Complete the application at vote.nyc, and the Board of Elections could really use your help. There is a shortage of trained poll workers. It is a paid position for both early voting and election day. And it makes you feel really important and special when you're helping those in your own community to come to the poll site and vote. So once we have elected those who will represent us, our work is still not done, because now we have the responsibility and the right to respectfully express our opinions on the way our elected officials are governing through the power of advocacy and lobbying, the second pillar of civic engagement. Lobbying is specific to a piece of legislation that already exists that you want to see passed or defeated. This is a very specific way to let your elected officials know how you would like them to vote on a specific piece of legislation and why this is so important to you and your community. Advocacy work, on the other hand, involves reaching out to the appropriate elected official to express our concern about issues. This is a way to let your elected official know how you feel about a specific concern, like gun violence, noise pollution, or affordable housing. This may lead them to support legislation when it comes up, or maybe even to write their own bill to address the community's concern. To exercise our right to express an opinion on an issue, it's really important to know who to turn to. How do we know who's responsible for which issue or which concern that we may care about? If my concern is a national issue like healthcare, foreign policy, or the internet, then I need to focus my energy and action directed at my federal level elected officials, my congressperson, senators, and the president. If my concerns are related to state issues like education, criminal justice, and election reform, for example, I need to seek out my state elected officials, my state assembly person, my state senator, or the governor. But if my concerns are local, like libraries, police, traffic, urban development, green space, certain aspects of education and housing, recreation, and quality of life issues, then I need to turn to my local elected officials, my city council person, the borough president, the mayor, the public advocate, or the comptroller. Your voice will be heard much louder on these local issues since your city council person is your neighbor and must live in your district. Let's focus our attention on New York City so that we can amplify our voices here for greater impact and to understand why voting and participating locally is so crucial. This is an organizational chart from the mayor's office showing the roles of the city's elected officials. It looks pretty daunting, doesn't it? So how does New York City actually run? You can learn to navigate the city's government, and here's how. The citywide elected officials are responsible for the overall governance of the entire city. The mayor acts as the chief executive of the city. The comptroller is responsible for all the city's finances, and the public advocate literally advocates for the public, magnifying the voices of the people. NYC 311 is the hub for city information. If you want to find out which city agency handles your concerns, or what the mayor is up to, or when your trash is going to be collected, or when your streets are going to be plowed, or when schools are opening or closing, 311 can guide you. You can also register complaints about city services by going to 311. The borough-wide elected officials are the city council and the borough president. The borough president oversees the interests of the entire borough in terms of land use, funding, and other concerns. The city council is the legislative body of New York City. They write local laws, and they can also amend the city charter with voter approval. Ranked choice voting was approved this way in 2019. You can find out who your city council person is by entering your address on the league special website called Who Represents Me. And if you just enter your address at mygovnyc.org, you can find out who all your elected officials are, including all their contact information so you can reach out to them with all your concerns. The City Council website, which we'll look at in just a moment, will help you find out what bills are being considered right now. You can follow a bill called an intro to see who the sponsors are and what your council person is doing to support or possibly derail this piece of legislation. Each local law can cover only one subject in New York City, so that makes it a bit easier to check out what's being considered. Knowing how all of this works is the first step in making your voice heard. You don't just have to follow a piece of legislation as it winds its way through the process. You can affect the outcome in a number of ways. You can write letters, call their office, send emails directly to your elected officials. You can express your opinion on a piece of legislation. Elected officials keep a tally of the number of people who reach out to them. They have a tipping point that registers on their radar and they start to pay attention. You could attend the meetings of committees and organizations who are working on these issues. The council meetings are always open to the public, and you can find out where and when on the City Council website shown on this slide, council.nyc.gov. You can even testify at a meeting. Often, the council members want to hear how a particular piece of legislation will affect a particular community. Stand up and be heard. And there are even more ways you can have impact. If you want to click on pb.nyc, this is our participatory budgeting site. You can engage in participatory budgeting right now. New York City is encouraging all city residents to get involved by joining this important group. The group has picked projects, and we will be voting on these projects within the next month. So keep an eye open for when you can vote. Community boards are also the most important grassroots organization and element in city government. These folks are volunteers who are recommended by their city council members in their districts that overlap the community board districts, and they are appointed by the borough president. They monitor delivery of city services such as sanitation and street maintenance, and they're involved in the planning and review of land use, and they make recommendations for the budget. Community boards meet regularly, and all their meetings are open to the public. You can sign up to receive updates from your community board and information about their work through your borough president's website, and you'll see that right here. You can also volunteer to serve on your community board, and all you have to do is click on community boards and fill out the application to volunteer to serve. The third pillar of civic engagement is getting involved in your community and becoming an activist in your community. And there are many ways that you can do this, even if you're not eligible to vote. There are non-governmental organizations that you can get involved with. You can join a local community group working in your neighborhood, such as us, the League of Women Voters of the City of New York. You can get involved in a local PTA, a political club, a civic club, a food pantry, an animal rescue group, or the public library. You could participate in demonstrations, marches, civil disobedience actions, and events sponsored by organizations you trust. You could start your own group through organizations you're already a member of. You can write letters. You can post on social media. You can volunteer for political campaigns. You can become a leader in your own community. What you can do right now to implement your rights and responsibilities and access your power to influence the direction of this city is a power beyond any power. Take a minute right now and review what we have discussed this evening and do a mental checklist right here. Can you check off, I am a registered voter? I will make a voting action plan. I'll find out what's on the ballot, where my poll site is, what are the important dates. And I'll share this information and election deadlines with friends and family. I'll learn who my city council person is and where my community board is. I will write an email, call, or schedule an appointment with an elected official. I'll join a community action group. I'll attend a public meeting or a demonstration. I'll attend a community board meeting. In New York City, the League of Women Voters provides timely information for New York City voters. And in order to do this, we manage a telephone information service to answer questions from voters during election season. We publish informational materials to keep voters updated. We host candidate debates and forums. We provide speakers like this evening to share information with community groups, corporations, schools, and libraries like you. We welcome new members, volunteers, and supporters to help us with this important work. Contact us to get involved with us. Thank you all for inviting the League of Women Voters of the City of New York to be able to share this important information with you. And I'd like to close this evening with the words of John Lewis, the late civil rights activist and congressman, who said, "Freedom is not a state, it is an act. It is not some enchanted garden perched high on a distant plateau where we can finally sit down and rest. Freedom is the continuous action we all must take, and each generation must do its part to create an even more fair, more just society." I hope this presentation has inspired you to go out and take action in your own community to make New York City, New York State, and the entire country a better place for all of us. Contact us if you have any questions, and I will certainly take questions right now from the chat. While we wait for questions, I do want to emphasize something very interesting about this upcoming primary. We will be electing, or I should say in the primary, we will be selecting the candidates who will be running in November for the entire city council because of redistricting in 2020. Now, interestingly, on this ballot for the primary, if the candidate running in your district is unopposed, there are no challengers to this candidate, that candidate will not be on a ballot. You will not have a ballot if the candidate is unopposed. So that's something to keep in mind. You may very well have judges or district leaders to vote for, but if your candidate for city council is unopposed, you will not see that candidate on the ballot. So that's important to keep in mind and to spread to other folks who might have that question. Another interesting situation this election is because of early voting and because of our new law about 10-day voter registration, the first day of early voting is also a day when people can register to vote. So if somebody chooses to register to vote on June 17th, they can go to their poll site, register to vote by voting with an affidavit ballot. And it's only that one day. So that's another interesting thing about this particular election. So I want to thank you all for coming. Thank you so much. and see you soon.